Hey guys, welcome back to Country Boy Guns on YouTube. Today I want to do an initial kind of first thought slash initial review of my Sig P365. Yes, I'm going to do a P365 video. I know there are a ton of them out there already, and I kind of debated back and forth in my head about whether or not I wanted to do a review on this gun at first, mostly because I don't have the number of rounds through this gun that I need personally to feel comfortable carrying it. And we'll get into kind of why that is later on in the video, but my benchmark for this gun is going to be at least 1,000 rounds with no malfunctions. At this point, I'm around 400 to 500 rounds, somewhere in that area, and no malfunctions so far. So if I do have any malfunctions or breakages or reliability issues, I will send it back to Sig, get them to fix it, and then I will reset my round counter and go until it hits 1,000 rounds with no issues or has more issues. And once I get through that point, I will let you guys know, or if I need to send it back to Sig, I'll let you guys know and give you an update to this video. But before we get started, just to let you guys know, all of these guns have been safety checked. They are cleared. Not going to go through and do all of that on camera for all of you, but just trust me, they've been cleared, and I'm going to be very safe about handling them, even though they are unloaded, right? So let me tell you where this concept kind of started in my mind. So a few months ago, I was standing in front of my gun safe, looking at a bunch of different guns and, fondling them and just kind of thinking about fantasizing, what do I want to do to these guns? Accessories, holsters, custom work, mods, and all that kind of good stuff. And as I was doing this, going back and forth between gun to gun to gun to gun, back to a gun, back to a gun, all over the place. By the way, if you guys do the same thing, feel free to hit that subscribe button and post in the comments down below. Let me know. It'll make me feel a little bit less alone in my own weirdness. If you guys like to fantasize about what you want to do to your guns, if you're the kind of guy that's not satisfied with something just stock out of the box, let me know. We can be friends. So as I was going through this exercise that I do on a semi-regular basis, I kind of had this startling realization about the gun. And it made me look at this gun in a completely different light. So if you don't know, this is a subcompact striker-fired 9mm pistol that has 10+1 in a standard flush fit magazine. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but there it is. It does hold 10+1, so 10 rounds in this magazine, 1 in the chamber. And that's pretty awesome given the size. And I knew that before I picked it out. I knew that it was a really small gun, held a lot of rounds of 9mm for its size category, kind of revolutionary and game-changing in that way. I knew all that before I went to the gun counter, picked it up, handled it, decided to spend my money on it. And I thought it was awesome just based on all of that. I mean, I do have a fair amount of experience with other guns, and to me, this just had something a little extra that was worth spending the money on. But on this one fateful night, that whole thing just kind of came into focus in a new way for me. So I was looking at the Sig along with my Glock 42. And you guys can see standard Glock 42. Hopefully it shows up on camera so you guys can see the markings. 380 ACP, 6+1 in a standard magazine. And as I'm looking at these guns, I realize that they're pretty much the same size. So if I can line them up back here for you guys at the back of the slide. The 42 is actually a little bit longer, just a hair, not much, but it's there. Now, the 42 is a little bit thinner. You guys can see that. Just a scotch. And then they're about the same height as well. I can't definitively say if one is taller or shorter than the other. But I'm not going to get the micrometer out and go through all that for the video, because essentially they're the same size. And that kind of lit up a light bulb in my head going, wow, 6 plus 1 of 380 in this gun versus 10 plus 1 of 9 mil in this for the same size. That's nuts, guys. That's crazy. So after that aha moment, I kind of settled back down and got back into my routine of, okay, well, this gun, I want to do this too, and this and this. And then I came across my Glock 43. So here's the 42 right here in my right hand. Here's the 43 in my left hand for size comparison. You can see, hopefully you can see on the slide, see the markings. So this pistol gives you 6 plus 1 rounds of 9 millimeter in a standard magazine. And I'm looking at these guns and kind of feeling them both, and I realized, wait, they feel kind of similar. Yeah, they weigh about the same. Now, I haven't weighed these myself. I'm not going to grab the scale right now, honestly, because I've already grabbed a whole bunch of stuff and moved into this room just for the review, and I don't want to stop the video and go grab a scale and a micrometer. But to my hands, they feel like they weigh the same unloaded. Now, that's important because 6 rounds of 9 mil, 10 rounds is going to weigh more than 6, right? So if we just take the unloaded weights with no magazine inserted, to be totally fair, polymer versus steel, I get that, as far as the magazine material goes, they feel like they weigh the same in my hand. So when you're carrying this, you're not going to notice a difference in weight between this and a Glock 43. So that also kind of blew my mind. Plus, the 43 is bigger than the 365. You can see it's longer in the front by a decent amount. The slides, or the guns, I guess, themselves, are about the same thickness. See if I can show you that better. You guys can see that there. And they're about the same height from the top of the slide to the bottom of the grip. Roughly the same. So that was another aha moment for me. Like, okay, so if this thing's the same size as a 42, the same weight as a 43, at least perceived weight, in my hands, which are not calibrated scales, by the way, what else could I compare this to kind of really set it off and highlight, I guess, what this gun can do for me and for you versus any other gun out there? Then I grabbed my Glock 26. Now this gun is very similar to the 365 in the fact that a standard capacity flush fit magazine for this gun is 10 rounds. Same as the Sig here. So they have the same capacity, but the Sig is shorter, at least from front to back, very much thinner, like a lot thinner, and again, about the same height. Not a significant difference in terms of the bottom of the magazine well to the top of the slide and the sights. But this gun, I mean, if you haven't held these two side by side, this thing is massive compared to the Sig. And people have referred to this as the baby Glock for years. I mean, this has been kind of the concealed carry standard for a long time before, you know, things like the Glock 43 or the Shield or the XDS. You know, guns in that category weren't really a thing 10 years ago for the most part. They weren't as popular as they are now, and there weren't as many options. So this was kind of the king of the hill. But this gun gives you the same thing in terms of capacity, but smaller. So after I kind of thought about all that stuff and came to those realizations, I was like, wow, that's a really interesting way to look at this gun. And I'm really surprised, actually, that Sig hasn't, or at least that I'm aware of, they haven't made that comparison to market this gun. So let's talk about some of the specs of it, just to give you guys that are very technically minded an idea of how small this is. This has a 3.1 inch barrel. I'm going to cheat using the Sig website for the specs, guys. An overall length of 5.8 inches, that would be from the back to the front. And an overall width of 1 inch. I'm assuming that they're including the controls over here in that measurement. And a height of 4.3 inches from bottom to top. So now that we got the specs out of the way, what do I think of the gun so far? Now, as I said, I'm not comfortable based on my round count with this gun carrying it. And that's based on some issues that have been reported in number on the internet, on YouTube and blog posts and forums and such. But overall, so far, I really like it. It's extremely tiny. I mean, if you look at where my thumb and my middle finger meet, and this is a very scientific measurement, guys, but around the grip, where those two meet, my thumb almost overlaps this first knuckle on my middle finger. 10 plus 1. Glock 26, 10 plus 1. Same thing, get that good grip. I can barely get the fingertips to touch. So this gun is so tiny, but it's so shootable. If you guys have ever shot a Glock 26, at least in my hands, this shoots a lot like the 19 and the 17 do. I don't notice a difference in recoil or accuracy or any of that between the three guns. So to me, this is kind of awesome because it's a smaller gun that I can carry and shoot just as well as the 17 that I'm carrying right now. Especially at self-defense type ranges. You start pushing it out 25, 50 yards, yeah, I might start missing more with that gun versus the 17. But still, that's a pretty awesome option for the size. The Sig, I will say it takes a bit more getting used to for me. I may not shoot it quite as well as a Glock 26, but there's only a hair's margin of difference there in my hands. I'm not the best shooter in the world. I'm not a competition shooter or anything like that. I don't go kick doors for a living. So for me, guns are purely recreational and defensive and that kind of thing. They're not an occupational thing for me, just so you guys understand some of my background. But I can shoot, if I take my time and place my shots at 10 yards, I can shoot a ragged hole that size. And the next chance I get to go out to the range, after I do a little bit of warm-up, because I haven't been to the range since like October, gets really cold where I live and lots of snow, you'll get stuck at the local range. I've done it. So I didn't risk getting stuck in negative 40 weather over the winter. So next time I go out, I'll warm up a little bit, shoot some groups with this guy, and show you just what I'm talking about. If you take your time with this gun, it has a really good trigger, really good sights, you can shoot really well with it. And even shooting, quicker, double taps and transitions between target or failure drill, two to the chest, one to the head, that kind of thing, I can do fairly well with this gun. Better, I would say, than I could do with the Glock 43. For whatever reason, it just shoots really well. It shoots almost like a duty size gun. Almost, for me. So that's my initial thought on the gun itself as far as handling and things like that. Let's talk about some of those issues before we go into some of the more features and aspects of the pistol. Some of the issues that have been reported. So if any of you guys watch Tim over at the Military Arms channel, if you don't, you should. Guy's awesome. He does a lot of really good videos, completely unbiased. He will tell you his opinion, what he really thinks. If a gun is trash, he'll tell you. If a gun's awesome, he'll tell you. He bought one of these and was actually carrying it for a while. He's made a couple of videos on this gun. And he loved it for the same reasons I love it. It's so small, compact, holds a lot of ammo, conceals really well under a t-shirt or almost any kind of garment if you have a good holster. It's got a lot of good stuff going for it. He was out doing his first video on this gun, and he had about 800 or 900 rounds through it or so towards the end of the video. And the last bit of filming that he was doing, he was firing it, and all of a sudden he got a dead trigger. And he realized that if he took his pistol and, charged it, made sure the striker was loaded, all that good stuff, and shook it, that his trigger would actually flop around just from him shaking the pistol. It's not supposed to do that. Mine's not doing that. And it wouldn't fire. So that gave him some concern. And he did some research, and I think the answer he came up with, which based on his evidence I agree with, is that his firing pin, or I'm sorry, his firing pin, his striker spring? Crap, now I can't remember what it was called. I don't remember what spring it is, but there is a spring in this pistol down inside the magazine well. I'll see if I can get a picture and roll that in for you guys right here. There's a spring that juts out into the mag well just a little bit on some of the guns. It doesn't do it on all of them. I've seen pictures of guns that didn't have that spring sticking out. That trigger return spring, that was it. It's called a trigger return spring. I'll show you guys the picture. That particular spring, because it jutted out into the back of the mag well and was hitting the back of this metal magazine, broke, I'm assuming, under recoil just after that consistent, banging against the back of the magazine. If you look at the back of my magazine, you can see that line right there on the back of the mag. His magazines had the same line on the back of them, and that's exactly where that spring sticks out into the magazine well. So that's what he believes caused the problem, and I tend to agree with his analysis. So that's a problem. The gun was hard broke. He could only get it to fire, I found out in his second video, if he inverted the pistol and pulled the trigger. And then it worked for some reason, but it wouldn't work in your normal upright configuration. So he actually ended up buying another one of these guns, and in his second video on the gun had some reliability issues with it. And then he bought another version of it, and I haven't seen a video of him shooting that third iteration of this gun yet. Don't know if he shot it yet, don't know what he's doing with it, but he did all that, one, because he wanted to bring us the information and show us a sample size greater than 1 on a gun that has been very popular and would be a great option if it was 100% reliable for everybody to conceal carry if they liked it. But also, he really wanted this gun to work. He talks about how much he loved the gun and loved the design. It had so much good stuff going for it. If it had just been reliable for him, he would probably be carrying this thing today. I don't know what he's carrying right now, but based on those two videos, I don't think it's one of these. Because of that, and other issues I've read on the internet about both the firing pin or trigger return spring. I don't know why I'm having trouble remembering that tonight. Based on that spring breaking and just other issues, the striker breaking, the firing pin tip, because of the way that the part is made. It's a MIM part, I believe, from the factory, and there have been some issues with that breaking. You may have seen videos of people talking about the striker drag in the back of the primer. So when you fire around, instead of seeing a dot in the primer, you'll actually see a trough cut into the primer because the slide is moving and trying to extract and eject that case before the firing pin has had time to return backwards. So that's broken some firing pins. I just have a little bit of trepidation about carrying the gun until I get, more rounds through it. But if I can get it to be 100% reliable, like I want it to be, I will carry this gun because it's that awesome. If you've watched other videos of mine, I like to carry bigger, more full-size guns, but there are times that I just want to run to the store real quick and I just throw something on. This will be a great option to just throw on in a holster and call it good. Now, let's talk about the rest of the features of the pistol, if you will, and we'll get into takedown and all that stuff. It has I'd say medium texture to the grip from the factory. If you've watched my other videos, I kind of like a very aggressive texture, like what I've put on my Glocks here. I did this myself with a soldering iron. I haven't done anything to this pistol yet because, honestly, if I have to send it back to Sig, I don't want there to be any modifications to it whatsoever because I don't want them to be able to say, well, you burned too deep with the soldering iron and that's what caused the problem or whatever. I want them to look at this and go, Yep, nope, that's how it came from the factory. This must be our problem. We need to fix it for free. That's just me. Once I get it to where I trust it and it's reliable enough for me, then I'll probably stipple this grip. It has forward and rear cocking serrations, which I'm personally a fan of. I haven't really mentioned this much in my other videos, but I really like a press check just to make sure there is a round in the chamber of a gun before I carry it. And I can do that just fine on a Glock that doesn't have forward serrations on it. It's not a problem, but that extra little bit of grippiness up at the front, I don't know, I just like it. Plus, I think it looks good on the pistol. And let's be honest, looks are important, right? Must not be the most important thing in the world because I somehow found a wife, but they are important. It comes with 3-dot night sights from the factory, which is a huge deal for this pistol. You guys can see those there. The front sight has that green circle outline, and the back two are just black until you turn the lights off, and then they glow nice and pretty at you. I will say one or two things I don't like about the sights are that they're not all white outline. I like, this is just my own personal weirdness, I like 3 white outlines around tritium sights, and I do prefer tritium sights for my handguns. I just like the white dots and how they pick up during the day and line up. Some people will say that the 3 dots make you slower and the 1 high-vis dot in the front is actually faster. I don't want to get into that debate. I feel that I can shoot quickly and accurately enough for my standards, although I am always trying to train and improve myself. And I don't think the sights are going to make that much of a difference. I think the training is actually what's going to make or break your ability to acquire your sights and get shots on target with a pistol, with some exceptions. If you have crappy sights, then you're probably not going to be that great with the gun. But these are not crappy sights by any means. Neither are my preferred 3-dot sights around 3 tritium vials. The other thing I don't particularly care for with these sights is that they're all 3 green. All 3 of the tritium vials glow green at night. They're the same color. I like to have a different color up front than the 2 in the back. Again, that's just me and my own personal weirdness. But these sights work great, whether it's daytime or dark. I haven't done any night shooting live fire with this gun, but I've done a lot of dry fire practice with it in the dark, and those sights do pick up very well for me. And I don't have any problems using them. The biggest advantage I'd say to these sights is they come from the factory. I paid around $450 for this pistol. I got a pretty good deal on it, but you can find it easily for $550, somewhere in there. Brand new. And it comes with really good defensive night sights. So for that reason alone, I don't see any need to change them at this point. I do have plans in the future, if this gun does well for me, to change those out. But we'll talk about that more in accessories later on. Other aspects of the gun. It has a one-sided slide release made for a right-hander, so it's on the left side of the pistol. And it's not present on the other side, but in most guns in this size category, that's kind of the standard. The XDS, the Smith & Wesson Shield, the Glock 42, 43, those all have just right-handed, aka on the left side of the gun, slide releases. And for you lefties out there, you're probably pretty used to the whole index finger technique at this point, or you just grab the slide and rocket it forward when you do a reload. So probably not going to be a huge deal for you if that's what you've been training with for a long time. But I'll tell you, if you're a lefty with this pistol, you're probably going to want to just grab the slide. And the reason is, I'll turn so I can show you guys this better. When I reload this pistol, for whatever reason, because it's so small, not only do I have to break my firing grip to eject the mag, which is normal, I do that with pretty much every pistol. My thumb just doesn't reach that button, even on this tiny gun. So I have to break my grip just a little bit to eject the magazine. But when I put the new magazine into the pistol, I feel like I have to stretch even more to come up here and grab this to pull down with my thumb, with my firing thumb. And if I'm doing that in a hurry, I feel like I don't have a good enough grip on the pistol and I'm afraid of dropping it. Again, that's me, my hand size, your mileage may vary. So what I've kind of trained myself to do with this is something a lot of people do with every pistol. I put the magazine in and then come up with my support thumb and drop the slide release. It's the only pistol I do that with, and once I figured out that's what I was going to need to do, I haven't had any issues with reloading it since then, and I haven't dropped it during a reload, thankfully. It is small enough that that is a real possibility, by the way, so don't laugh. Just a little training thing for me. It may be the same for you, it may not be. That's totally cool. It has a mag release on the left side of the gun, again for a right-hander, but I believe you can swap that out. Let me look at the magazines here. Yes, so it is cut to be an ambidextrous release. You can swap that and put it on the other side if you so choose. I haven't done that because I'm right-handed. I don't feel the need to swap to the other side. The one complaint I do have about the magazine release is, even though it's big, which is nice, you're not hunting for it, I wish it was a millimeter or two longer. And I understand that they kept it the size they did so that it would still be nice and thin and slim and trim and great for concealed carry. And they didn't want anybody to accidentally activate that while they're carrying it. And I get that. But for me, I wish it was just a millimeter or two longer. And the reason is, until I got used to this magazine release, you know, based on my shooting with Glocks and CZs and other guns, I really had to rotate this pistol in my hand pretty far to hit the mag release enough to eject a mag. I would hit it a lot of times and just wouldn't quite get it enough to eject that mag until I started rotating it just a little bit more, because I had to push it in just a little bit further. Now, I've since been able to train around that issue as well, and the last time I took this to the range, at least, and doing drills at home and stuff, I haven't had that problem as often. It'll still happen to me every now and then, but it's a good magazine release. It works well. Every time that you get a good push on it, it drops the mag freely. There's never any snagging. There's never any, staginess or, oh, this thing didn't release right because there was too much pressure on the magazine. Whatever the case may be, it just works when you press it fully. It has a metal trigger that's curved. I would prefer a metal flat trigger, but it's a metal trigger, and I like that a lot. I really like metal triggers in pistols. The frame polymer, that's awesome. I love polymer frame guns. There's a lot of stuff I would be willing to take polymer on. I don't like the trigger, the sights, or the guide rod, or any pins to be polymer for that matter, which is funny because I like Glocks. But anyway, one other criticism I do have of the trigger is that it doesn't have any kind of inertial safety or dingus, if you will. What I'm talking about, if you don't know, is that's this little guy. So this thing on the front of your trigger has one job, and that job is, if the gun drops on something, the weight of the trigger, the inertia from the fall, will not fire the gun because that dingus is in the way. This has to be moved out of the way before the gun will fire. Just for my own sanity. So move that out of the way. Boom, it'll go bang. Otherwise, not gonna go bang. I wish the P365 had that. And the big reason I wish it had that is because, if you guys remember, not that long ago, when the Army announced that the Sig P320, which this looks a lot like, especially the trigger, was going to be the new M17 handgun, I think it was right after that announcement, a lot of people started posting videos and commenting that they were getting their P320s to drop fire. Dropping them on concrete, hitting them with a rubber mallet would cause them to fire. And there are several videos on YouTube. Such did one, I know. I'm sure some other famous YouTubers did as well, proving that that was in fact the case. Now, to Sig's credit, there was some announcements and I think a recall on those pistols, and they did some engineering tweaks to kind of fix that. But in my opinion, if they had just put a dingus in it from the first place, that wouldn't have been a problem. So kind of wish they had done that. Not going to drop test this gun. However, that is a slight concern for me. As far as the trigger pull itself, it's a really good pull. I'll try to show you guys this on camera. So you've got some take up right there, and then a wall, a little bit of creep, and a nice break. Reset. It's right there. Very audible and tactile. And then a little bit of creep. Bang. Here's that reset again. So it's a pretty good trigger. It's not super heavy. It's not super light. It's kind of in that Goldilocks zone of good concealed carry gun trigger or duty gun trigger, although this would not be a duty gun for me. And I think it's great. And it definitely contributes to the accuracy of this gun and the ease of shootability, at least in my opinion. If it was a really heavy, crappy trigger, like I have a Kel-Tec PF9 that has just this long, heavy, it's a double action only gun. I mean, it's kind of not fair to make the comparison, but that's a really hard gun to shoot well. And a lot of that is due to the trigger. The trigger on this thing, I think, is a good balance of safe and yet easy to shoot and easy to use. It's got a good reset. It's got a good pull to it, a good break. So all the elements you really need for a concealed carry trigger. Not a match gun by any means, but wouldn't want to take this to a match anyway, unless it was a specific subcompact pistol kind of match. Moving on, it has a relatively large trigger guard for a gun in this size. I mean, you compare it to the Glock 43, you can see much bigger trigger guard. Not as much room as you might think in front of the trigger here, but still enough that I could get a gloved hand in there, or a gloved finger in there. Can you imagine me putting the whole hand through there? Gloved finger in that area to pull the trigger without much difficulty. Now, if you have big sausages for fingers, it's probably not for you, but if you have big sausages for your hands and your fingers, this gun is not going to be for you. It's going to be way too tiny, and you're probably not going to be able to get a good grip on it in the first place. Just something to think about. It has a proprietary accessory rail up here. There's no slot cut in the bottom for like a pick rail light or something like that. And I don't fault Sig for that, even though I'm a big fan of being able to have accessories on, like lights and such on guns like this. Because this is so small, there may be one tiny little red laser out there on the market that would fit if you cut a slot in this. Maybe. But it's so small that by putting this proprietary rail system in there, they actually allowed for a red laser, a green laser, and a flashlight that they are either producing themselves or outsourcing and then stamping their brand on for this gun. They have the Lima 365. You can get it in red or green. That's a laser. And then the Foxtrot 365 is, if I remember correctly, 100 lumen light that goes onto this rail. Now, they were probably intending to be the only company that provided items like this, but anybody that knows the gun industry knows that other companies are going to come out with stuff like that for a really popular gun like this. And Crimson Trace is already making some products that go on that rail. And I'm sure other companies are quick to follow suit as well. Other than that, I think that's about the only features I really wanted to talk about with the gun. Let's get into takedown. Gun is clear, we know that. We've already dry fired it on camera, so I'm not going to go through that exercise. But if you need to do that, you're a novice, you're new to guns, make sure there's no magazine in the chamber. Or I'm sorry, magazine in the pistol, in the magazine well. And make sure there's no round in the chamber. Lock it open. I guess I will go through this for you guys. For those of you who are new to guns and maybe don't know, lock it open, visually and physically inspect the chamber. Make sure there's not a round in there that just failed to eject and you didn't realize it. From there, since you've already locked your slide to the rear, take this lever here in front of your slide release, rotate it down 90 degrees, just like that. Then all you have to do is pull your slide back, slowly let it go forward, and slide it off the front of the pistol. Pretty simple. From there, you take and you don't have to pull the trigger. A lot of people hate pulling the trigger when they take apart like a Glock or something. It doesn't bother me, but those of you guys out there who hate it and think it's the worst thing in the world, there you go. You don't have to do it. Take your guide rod out by, let's make sure that better on camera. By pressing forward on it just a little bit and lifting up, the guide rod just comes right out. This is a metal guide rod. It's a dual captive recoil system, so it's got 2 springs here, one small, one big, and it's captive. Other pistols have a spring that you can just slide right off. With this one, you can't do that, and I really like that. I like that it's metal. I'm a big fan of metal guide rods. I don't like polymer here. I said that earlier. It never had one fail on me or anything, but my own personal weirdness, I like metal for a guide rod. Then for your barrel, you just lift it up. You have to slide it forward a little bit and take it out of the slide. Looking at the barrel, we can see a little bit of polish around the feed ramp. Not a whole lot there, but I haven't had any issues with this gun so far with feeding or extraction or ejection or double feeds or stovepipes or any of that stuff. It's run flawlessly for me at this point. So it's well machined. You can see some of the finishes starting to come off on the barrel in some places, but it seems to be a well-made barrel, good quality. It's got good rifling cut in it. I need to run a brush through this apparently. Tiny little barrel. The slide, pretty standard striker fired slide. It does have a firing pin block right here where my finger is pointing, if you guys can see that. So that prevents the striker from going all the way forward and protruding out the breech face until the trigger bar pushes up on that little weird circular thing and allows the striker to move forward. And you can see it protruding there. So the frame, it's got these nice 2 long one-piece rails that the slide rides on versus having 2 short ones up front and 2 short ones in the back. Pretty beefy ejector right there. And there's not much else to say about the frame. So reassembling this pistol, there is one trick. And I'll show you guys that in a second. To put it back together, invert your slide, take your barrel, make sure the locking lugs are facing upwards, put the bullet exit hole, that's what I'm going to start calling this, the muzzle, in all my videos, just so you guys know. Bullet exit hole, very technical term. Face it towards the bullet exit hole of the slide, just like so. Drop it in there, slide it forward, and then slide it back into place. Take your recoil spring, fat end towards the front, so the fat end, skinny end, or the me end, and the, I don't know, some really skinny famous actor, Ashton Kutcher. Fat end towards the front, place it in the hole that's cut out for it in the bottom of the slide right here, and then compress your recoil spring just a little bit until it sits flat on the little pre-made shelf for it. Now, the trick with the frame, you see how the takedown lever has rotated up. If I pull down on it, I can't get it to go back into the correct position. For whatever reason, the design of this pistol, if your lever rotates up on you like this, you have to lift the slide release, then you can rotate the lever down. So the lever wants to move back. You see how I can't make it just stay there, it wants to move back. And if it moves into that upward position, you have to lift the slide release to get it to rotate down. So hold that down with your index finger or your thumb, either one. Line up your rails with the back of the slide going towards the back of the frame, just like so. Slide it on. Now there is one part in here, and it's not giving me trouble right now, but there's a little tiny part here. Let's see if I can show it to you guys. Right here, you see the thing that's going up and down right now? Right next to that, just underneath it, there's a little part right where my finger is. That part, if it's sticking up, which happened to me when I did the first version of this video that I'm not posting because the quality was crap, that little part was sticking up and it was causing my slide to not go any further back than there. It wouldn't go back. If that starts happening to you guys, if you can't get a gun apart or put back together smoothly and easily, don't bang on it. Don't use excessive force to do it. You can do a little tap if you want. That's not going to hurt anything. But you don't want to just like slam the gun onto a table or something, because you could end up breaking a very important tiny part. If that happens, just examine the gun, see what's going on, and see if you can find the interference. You don't want to break your gun because you were trying to manhandle it. Anyway, since that part is down, I can slide all the way back onto the frame. And then I'm just going to lock it open using the slide release right there. And rotate my takedown lever back up to the horizontal position. From there, gun's back together, it's good to go. We've already talked a little bit about accessories for this gun, but I want to talk about a few other options for you besides the light and the laser. Obviously, if you're going to carry it, you need a good holster. There are companies out there that will mill the slide, so you can put a micro red dot, something like a Shield RMSC or something on there. If you guys want to do that, that's actually something I would be very interested in doing. But I'm going to wait a little while and just see if somebody like Aimpoint comes out with an even smaller version of the Acro. If you don't know what the Acro is, it's a new red dot sight that's pretty freaking awesome in my opinion. I'd love to get my hands on one to test it, but just from the reviews I've seen and the design of it, I think it's pretty awesome. I'd like to see something like that versus an RMSC or an RMR type optic. But there are companies that will mill the slide for you. You can just do a quick Google search and find some. You can use any, as far as I understand, any standard 9mm Sig sights for this pistol. So with the exception of the P938, this takes any 9mm Sig sight. So if you like a fiber optic front, or you want to go with suppressor height sights or something like that, knock these out of the dovetails, put the other ones in, and you're ready to rock and roll. I'm sure there's a company making a threaded barrel for it. I haven't researched that because I don't plan on suppressing this, but lots of people like to suppress everything, so I'm sure there's a company out there making money off of doing that. And I believe, oh, no, there's one more very important accessory for this gun, and it's the magazines. So when you buy this gun, you get two 10-round magazines in the box. You get a flush fit magazine, and you get a pinky rest magazine. And I'll show you what both of those look like real quick. So your flush fit magazine goes in and looks just like that. Now, when I grip this gun with the flush fit mag, my pinky hangs off the bottom. Again, medium-sized gloves is what I wear. Kind of dangles off. It wants to stay up there, but then it's just like, I give up, and it just lets go. That doesn't bother me. I don't have any issues shooting pistols with my pinky dangling underneath them, but some people really hate that. And if that's you, this pinky rest magazine is going to do what you want. So, you're in there. Now my pinky stays up on the pistol because of that magazine. Now, the other option for you, because these are both 10-round magazines, and at least for my money, if I'm going to carry this thing with one of these mags, I want to carry the flush one. Make it as nice and compact, as small as possible so that I don't print. But the other option you have is a 12-round extended magazine. I'll show it next to the flush fit mag and the pinky rest mag. So it is a little bit longer than both of them, but it gives you 12 rounds in the magazine versus 10. And this thing is a really good solid grip. Almost the entirety of the meat of my palm is touching magazine or grip. My pinky has lots of room to hang out on there. So that's a really good option, and you get 2 more rounds. Now the downside is these things are expensive. They're between $50 and $60 depending on where you pick them up. You may be able to find them cheaper than that. Sig mags are just expensive. But magazines are good, right? If you don't know, the most common malfunction in a semi-automatic handgun relates to the magazine, just statistically speaking. So if for no other reason than that, I always carry at least one spare mag, because if I do start getting issues and failures with the magazine in the gun, I may have more ammo in the magazine, but if it's failing on me, I'm going to get that thing out of there, put a new magazine in if I'm in a defensive type situation. Now, talking about the magazines, one thing Sig did really well is you see this upward cut here. I don't know how to call it, but there's material missing right here in this section of the grip. That's because they made these floor plates with these little shelves on them, so that when they go into the pistol, if you had a double feed and you needed to grip and strip that magazine, you can easily get your fingers in that little gap and get a good hold on the magazine to pull it out of the pistol. If you've never cleared a double feed, I can tell you you want that, because you have the top round of the magazine partially out of the magazine and on the feed ramp. The feed ramp is right here. And the only way to get the thing out quickly is to rip that magazine out. It's not just going to fall out for you. So, something to consider there. Good job, Sig, for that. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to talk about with this pistol. If you guys have any questions about this gun, or any of the other guns on the table for that matter, my thoughts, my experiences, my impressions, post those down in the comments below. If you like what you saw, hit the subscribe button, share the video, tell your friends about it. Like I said, if you like to fantasize about the things you would like to upgrade on your guns, subscribe and comment down below. Let me know that I'm not alone in this world. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate it. I know it was kind of a longer one, but I had a lot to say about the gun. I will be doing a final thoughts on this once I get it to the round count that I'm comfortable with, and I will post if I have to send it back to Sig for any reason. So, thanks again, guys. I appreciate it. Y'all take care. Till next time, roll Tide. I'll see you later.